Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us. I am your guide, Derek Hayes. Good evening, everyone. I'm damn pleased that you chose to hang out with us here this evening. Where it's sort of like a little club. A ghost story club, if you will. A dozen or so of us meet here each and every week to share spooky stories and terrifying tales. All true, or at least they're supposed to be. Now, the subject matter ranges from cryptid creatures like Bigfoot, Mothman, the Lizard Man, to ghostly encounters with disembodied voices, full-body apparitions, and even ghostly possession. But not on every single episode like certain television programs that you might see out there. Now, here at Monsters Among Us, we take all of this stuff seriously, no matter how outlandish the story or how wild the claim. Because if 8+ years in this business has taught me anything, it's that there are still mysteries on this planet. And if you listen closely enough, the callers will convince you of that as well. So strap on your listening hat, but do keep on those skepticism specs. Because the only thing better than a good scary story is one that withstands all attempts at debunking. And yeah, I might do a little bit of that tonight as well. Now I'll stop talking and share this incredible entry out of the state of Connecticut. Kyle, welcome to tonight's program.
Hi, Derek. My name is Kyle. I'm from the Northeast, specifically Connecticut. This story I had took place actually around this time last year, and I believe I encountered what would be considered a dogman. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I don't believe in dogman or Bigfoot. I think a lot of cryptid sightings are misidentified species of animal, but I'm pretty confident I saw a dogman. So I live in northern Connecticut, and if you're not familiar with that place, it's very rural with parts that are also very suburban. The town I live in is both, there's suburbs and then there's a lot of wooded areas, a lot of fields. I was driving home from work late at night because I work second shift, so this was around 1 a.m. in the morning. And the road that I take to get home is very curvy and it's not very well lit. So, of course, I'm driving around 25, 30 miles an hour, and halfway down the road, there is a pullover that is cleared out, and it's just a kind of a dirt road, and it abuts an active train track. And as I was coming around the bend, I saw what looked like, initially I thought was a bear. It had very dark fur, this creature. It was eating roadkill. And I slowed down, and as my headlights shone on it, I saw that it definitely was not a bear. I basically had a side kind of profile, and it had the head of a dog, kind of, but it had short ears, a long snout. I didn't see the teeth. It wasn't snarling. It didn't even acknowledge me. The head almost looked like that Egyptian god with a dog head and the human body. A very kind of just long, kind of narrow snout and stubby ears. And the body was very odd. It was just hard to describe it. I remember vividly because it was on two legs and it was kind of crouched down like you would to pick something up, and it was eating this roadkill, but it almost looked like it was grabbing it with its hands. And I remember specifically seeing its legs, especially its thighs, and just remembering like, wow, that is like huge. Like the musculature was just, it almost looked like a bodybuilder, and the arms also too. So this thing was on 2 legs, and its limbs didn't look proportionate. Its arms looked long, but its legs looked also long. Like if this thing was on 4 legs, it would have had a tough time walking. And it didn't look at me. It didn't really even acknowledge me. It was eating, and I clearly saw it. I slowed down, and I drove by it, and I actually, to make sure I saw what I saw, I immediately turned around, and I saw it again. And again, it didn't acknowledge me. I wasn't going to stop and get out and look at it, but yeah, pretty sure this thing was a dogman, at least from everything I've looked up on the internet. I've scoured the internet, and that's the closest thing I can think of. I know they're not really seen up where I live, but I really have no explanation for what I saw. I mean, it definitely wasn't a regular dog. It definitely was not a bear. It was like no animal I've ever seen. And I remember I saw a little bit of the eye shine, and it was just bright yellow. So that's my story, and I'm a big fan of the podcast, and keep doing what you're doing, man. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Kyle. Now that dog-like god that he was referring to, well, that's Anubis, the ancient Egyptian god associated with mummification and the afterlife, often depicted with a jackal's head in a human's body. Anubis guided souls to the underworld and protected the dead during their journey. Now, if you will, imagine yourself driving down a lonely stretch of road, and something that reminds you of that graces your headlights. And to have the wherewithal to turn around and get a better look. I do like the cut of your jib, Kyle. But I do have a small axe to grind. Kyle drove past this beast 2 times and didn't snap a single picture. Shame on you, Kyle. We could have solved this dogman mystery right then and there with a simple photograph. And quite the mystery this monster is. As Kyle had mentioned, it sounds like he saw the infamous dogman. Now imagine a werewolf, fully transformed. A half canine, half human creature that's been reported all over the country. Ohio, Kentucky, and Michigan seem to be the biggest hotspots, but Wisconsin is the true home of the beast. Up there, it's reported to roam an area around Elkhorn, Wisconsin, called Bray Road. And they creatively call the creature up there the Beast of Bray Road. Now, coincidentally enough, there is a report of that creature that, at least to me, sounds nearly identical to the report Kyle just laid before us. This report occurred in the fall of 1989, and the event that took place there would change the life of a local restaurant worker named Lori Andreezy forever.
I saw a thing. I thought it was a human being at first on the side of the road. So I slowed down to look, and it was hair covered. It had pointy ears, and I drove by real slow, and he was just right on the side of the road, so I got a really good look at him. And he was brown and silver colored hair. He was kneeling. That's why I thought it was a human being, because he was kneeling. And when I looked at him, I could tell he was eating roadkill, and he had his paws up like this, like he had elbows. Most animals would get spooked, but this one just didn't get spooked at all. He just looked at me, and he had glowing eyes and very long claws, and I'd say just by looking at him, he was probably the size of an average man.
Now tell me that this doesn't sound almost exactly like Kyle's experience. And that clip, by the way, was from a special report on the monster at the PBS station up there in Wisconsin. A link to the full documentary can be found in the show notes. And you know, believe it or not, there are other very credible stories of the Beast of Bray Road eating roadkill. But we'll share those at another time. But for now, let's focus on all the similarities. Now, while Wisconsin is a far cry from Connecticut, and off the top of my head, I cannot think of any dogman sightings reported out of the state of Connecticut. So could it actually be the same thing? Assuming that the beast of prey road is some sort of flesh and blood animal, as many have suggested. Now, I might know a lot about cryptozoology, but I'm not privy to the migratory patterns of our native dogman population. But I can tell you that creatures like this are witnessed all over the country, and probably all over the world, even back east. In fact, I've shared a couple of calls over the years that also suggest something big, hairy, and scary might be lurking the forests of Connecticut. In Season 14, Episode 18, Sean told of being stalked by an upright, hairy creature while fishing in the state. And then again, just recently on Season 17, Episode 7, Andrew told us about a huge, human-shaped creature that burst from the tree line and ran past him and his friends on a darkened Connecticut trail. And Delaney found this. Nearing the end of their shift around 4 a.m., 2 seasoned EMTs were driving down a wooded stretch of highway near the town of Ashford, Connecticut. Suddenly, the paramedics came to an abrupt stop after noticing an enormous creature crouched on the side of the road, some 100 feet in front of their vehicle. As the ambulance slowly approached, the canid-like beast, which stood between 7 and 9 feet tall, sprung up from its squatted position, planted its feet, whipped back its ears, and turned to stare down the 2 frightened and frazzled first responders. The monster gave a devilish smirk before bounding off into the woods, leaving the men to question their encounter. Now later, when the 2 EMTs were discussing the events, the driver revealed that while his partner was watching the colossal cryptid in front of the ambulance, he noticed 2 more dogmen hunched over behind the wagon, presumably in some sort of ambush position. Now, after making eye contact with the second beast in the rearview mirror, he noticed it attempting to use its massive hand to pry open the patient door, which luckily was locked at the time, a happenstance that perhaps may be the only reason we're hearing this tale today. And coincidentally, this internet-famous encounter took place near Putnam, Connecticut, a town named after General Israel Putnam, the man who was responsible for killing the very last wolf in the state of Connecticut, all the way back in 1742. So to say that Connecticut is big on the dogman might be a bit of an overstatement. But, as we learned here tonight, there have been a few sightings, and there is some history to help support the idea that something strange is out there. And of course, it's entirely possible that whatever it was that Kyle saw that evening could have just been passing through, expanding the realm of possibilities even further. So thank you again, Kyle, for sharing the entry. As one of my favorite cryptids, I always love a good dogman tale.
Coal and natural gas are not earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with.
Now, most Americans think they spend about $62 a month on subscriptions. But get this, the real number is closer to $300. Since signing up with Rocket Money, I've noticed that companies increase your subscription price without even telling you. Price changes on streaming services, car insurance, and domain services that I use so far. Changes I may have missed otherwise. Now, Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills. Budgeting has never been easy for me, but the Rocket Money app makes keeping track of what I spend so easy. It flags frequent spend items, sneaky service fees, and upcoming auto-pay charges. The app shows you all your subscription services laid out in one place, which makes them so much easier to keep track of and stops me from overspending. Rocket Money even helped me cancel a subscription in just a few taps. Now, Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is submit a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money goes to work on your behalf. It's a pretty nice feature. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's features. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/Monsters Among Us. That's rocketmoney.com/Monsters Among Us. rocketmoney.com/Monsters Among Us. Now, how about something ghostly to cleanse your palate? For that, please welcome the following anonymous caller from parts unknown.
Hi, Derek. So I was on my way home from work. It's like almost midnight at this point. And I was listening to episode 24 on season 15, and Bri had called in, and at the end of her story, you had mentioned about most calls for ghosts aren't in like modern day attire, and it made me realize that a lot of my ghosts are actually modern day attire. So I wanted to share one in particular. 18 years ago, I was driving home. It was middle of the day, and it was a 2-lane road and then like a median right in between the lanes. And I'm driving home and I am going eastbound. And so the median is to my left-hand side. And my buddy is a buddy of mine, I guess a friend of mine, is sitting in the passenger seat. And out of nowhere, this guy just walks straight out in front of my car. And I, of course, swerve. I avoid hitting this person. And my buddy's like, oh my God, what in the world are you doing? He's thinking I'm like losing my mind because, you know, female driver or something like that. Anyway, so I told him, I said, this guy just walked out in front of the car. You didn't see this? And he's like, no. I'm like, dude, he was literally wearing a striped shirt, jeans, sneakers. Like, you didn't see this guy literally walk out in front of the car? And he's like, no. So a few minutes go by, and he's like, all right, what was this guy wearing? And I described what the kid was wearing and everything. He was probably like late teens, early 20s, something like that. And I described what he was wearing, and it was a white and blue striped shirt, long sleeve. It was blue jeans, and then just basic sneakers, like a pair of Adidas, if that kind of gives away my age at all. So he kind of looks at me, my buddy looks at me with like this blank stare, and I'm like, what in the world is wrong with you? And he opens up his phone, and he looks at this picture. I'm pretty sure it was like a MySpace picture at the time. And he shows the picture to me, and I'm like, that was the kid. Like, why in the world did he step out in front of the car? And particular person, like facial, everything was exactly what this picture was. So like, it literally was like as if this guy literally stepped out in front of my car. And my buddy proceeds to tell me that it was a friend of his that had been killed just a few days prior. And I went, okay, well, you know, if you would like to tell him to not step out in front of my car, I don't think I can unalive a ghost. But yeah, so that's one of my many modern day clothes ghosts. At the time, it was a little freaky, but now looking back on other experiences I've had, I find a lot of them to be more of like, hey, let whoever it is that the message is for know that I'm all right, everything's good, and that's it. So I kind of take it as kind of like an honor to be that person, to be able to relay the message to their friend, because it's always usually a pretty good feeling. It's not like a really bad or sad feeling or anything like that. But other than this guy kind of scaring me by stepping out in front of my vehicle, it wasn't like a negative feeling or anything like that I got from him. Anyway, so just wanted to add to the modern clothing stories. And I hope you have a great night. And now that I got my first call jitters out, maybe I'll call with some of my other stories that everyone likes to kind of laugh at and get a kick out of. So anyway, thank you for everything that you do and for bringing us all together and being able to share our stories. I hope you have a good night. Bye.
Thank you, caller. Now, you know, that's something I think about all the time. If ghosts are real, which they very well may be, then it's likely that there are ghosts wearing Guess t-shirts or Jinkos, Nikes or something. So it makes me happy that our caller saw something that almost fits that description perfectly. Now, how the passenger was able to identify this mysterious figure so quickly, a figure that he didn't even see, well, that might be even more mysterious than the concept of a ghost itself. Either way, great story, caller, and thank you for sharing it here with us. Now, if you would like to share a story here on the program, a true story, give our hotline a call at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or record your story on your phone and send me the voice file at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget about those amusement worker calls and those hometown legends as well. Now, next up, we venture to the state of Illinois, where Joe is waiting with his strange experience.
Hello, Derek. My name is Joe. I'm a first-time caller. I'm calling from Northwest Illinois, about 3 hours from Chicago. So this was about 4 or 5 years ago. It was a beautiful, sunny fall day. So me and my girlfriend at the time, we decided to go for a little hike out at a forest preserve called Loud Thunder, which is about a half hour from where I live. So we took off down the highway, and we were getting close to the forest preserve, and there's a lake in the middle of it. So we were heading towards that. And my car, I had a sunroof, and if you hit the sunroof button back, then the whole sunroof will retract and open. But if you press the button forward, then it would just pitch up the back of the sunroof at just a little bit of an angle. So the front of the sunroof is still flush with the roof. So just the back end pitches up, kind of like a spoiler on the back of a car, if you can imagine that. And I didn't have any other windows open. So you kind of created sort of a vacuum that just sucking air out that little 2 inches open at the back of that sunroof. So, like I said, there wasn't a cloud in the sky or anything. So we're going about, 50, 60 miles an hour down the road. I'm driving, she's in the passenger seat, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a white streak come in through that little gap in the sunroof, come down, and basically it hit the corner of my girlfriend's sunglasses, snapped the sunglasses completely in half, just snapped. They fell off her face, and the white streak went right down into the floorboard of the car. And, she looked at me like, did you just throw something at me or what? And I looked over at her still what just happened? So we're only a couple minutes from the lake at this point. And so we get down to the lake, we park, and I had just cleaned out my car, vacuumed it and everything, just a day before that. So there was no trash, no anything on the floorboard. So we park, and I'm looking all over for anything, that could have done that, a rock or, hail, but like I said, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. So there was nothing there, and then when you think about it, if you're going at that rate of speed, for something to come in at an angle, through the back of that, it's just the physics for something to even hit that gap, moving at that rate of speed and coming in the back, that's almost impossible anyway. So, yeah, that's my story. Unexplainable. I still think about it quite a bit and haven't really talked about it to many people. So, love the show. Helps me get through my workday. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, that's pretty weird. I instantly think of the film Christmas Vacation, when Clark yanks the spouting off the house and sends ice sailing into Margot and Todd's bougie condo, breaking their window and destroying their entertainment center. But the ice had melted before they got home and saw what caused the damage. So, with no smoking gun, so to speak, they weren't able to figure out what broke the stereo system. Now, I watch that movie each and every Christmas day, so that scene is burned into my brain. And it reminds me of that because I wonder if the same thing didn't happen to Joe and his girlfriend. A piece of ice somehow falling from the sky, sneaking through the sunroof, and colliding with the girlfriend's sunglasses, miraculously missing her head. Then the ice shattered into 1,000 pieces and disappeared, evaporated or soaked into the car's upholstery. Now, I know Joe mentioned that there wasn't a cloud in the sky, but perhaps ice came off of a jet or something in low orbit. And it's also worth noting that over the years I've heard a lot of reports about people being shot with BBs and small caliber bullets and not even realizing it. The bullet, or part of it, embeds in the skin and somehow just goes unnoticed. So perhaps there was a tiny fragment, and it's now lodged in the girlfriend's skin somewhere. Wave a metal detector over her head and that'll tell you if it's in there. Of course, maybe someone out there has a better theory. Until then, a big thank you, Joe. A mystery like that would absolutely drive me crazy.
Definitely want to hear from you, me.
Now, have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement toward better habits, led by the sponsor of tonight's episode, Fume. Now, Fume is a award-winning flavored air device. You might be thinking, flavored air, what's that? Well, if vapor is compared to sticky soda, Fume flavored air is more like an herbal tea. There are tons of flavors to choose from, like crisp mint, orange vanilla, and white cranberry. With flavored air, you can satisfy your oral fixation through a passive diffusion system that doesn't use electronics, vapor, or combustion. Now, when I first tried Fume, I noticed the awesome look of the device right off the bat. It's sleek and made of real wood, and it's actually made to fidget with, which can be very calming if you're someone who has a hard time sitting still, like I do. Now, Fume draws flavor into your mouth and fills the void that ditching a bad habit can leave. It gives you something better to reach for. And if this is your first time trying Fume, I recommend starting with the crisp mint or the orange vanilla. Both are my favorites. Now, Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code MONSTERS to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head to tryfume.com/monsters. That's tryfum.com/monsters. And use code MONSTERS to get a free gift with your order today.
You've got to drink caffeine all day, or else you're going to lose that high. That's not all thy work.
Now, have you ever been sitting in a room and a stranger walks in? Now, maybe you're at a bar or a restaurant, and the second that stranger crosses the threshold, you get an instant reaction that there is something different about that person. Well, Hannah in Missouri has had a similar experience.
Hi, Derek. This is Hannah. I am calling you from Kansas City, but this happened in Brooklyn. I would say this was probably last February or March. It was definitely wintertime. I was going to see a show at my favorite venue there called TVI. I was with a friend. The show was great. It was super fun. It lets out, and I'm pretty sweaty from dancing around, so I'm kind of making a beeline out of the venue section of the place into, they have a main bar area. And so the first thing that happens is that all of a sudden it just kind of feels like there's somebody who all of a sudden is trying to walk exactly where I'm walking, which is interesting and weird because I usually have a pretty good understanding of how my body moves through time and space. So it was just weird, and I didn't touch her. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. Let me get out of your way. There was no reaction from her really at all, but she was just like a beautiful young woman in kind of like a mini dress with a big coat over it, and then kind of like ravey big boots on. And I was embarrassed, but I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I made her mad because she really didn't even acknowledge my apology or whatever. And so I was like, okay, whatever. So I get a glass of water. And then a little bit later, I am sitting down. There's like a booth section with my friend, and we're talking, da-da-da-da. And I see that same woman, like my friend and I are facing one another in this booth. So I see that same woman who I was walking in the same place as. She comes from behind his shoulders towards me, and I look up at her and I smile, kind of like an embarrassed smile to be like, oh yeah, sorry, it's me again. But again, there's just like no reaction on her face. And then she walks behind me, and then he and I keep talking, and about 30 seconds later, once again coming from behind him and walking towards me is the same woman. And I stop him and I'm just like, hey, this is weird, but like, is there a way that somebody could have just walked behind me, done a loop, and then gone around and walked from behind you towards me again? And he was like, oh my God, are you talking about the woman in the dress and the coat and those rave boots? And I was like, yes. And then he flips out and he stands up from the table, because there aren't very many people there anymore. Like, the venue is about to shut down. He is like, wait, where did she go? Where did she go? Because he had a great view of the only way at that point in the night that you could exit anywhere. And he had seen her walk behind like a group of maybe 3 people and then just never reemerge from the other side and go out the exit. So it was really exciting that somebody else also witnessed this. And later when I asked him, I was like, wait, how did you know that that was the person that I was talking about? He was like, I've just had a weird feeling about her a couple different times tonight. Like, it doesn't seem like she belongs at this like rock and roll scene. And also just like, I think he was just like getting general interesting, like kind of out there vibes from this person as well. So I don't know, maybe that helps make sense of like why all of a sudden out of nowhere there was somebody who seemed to be walking in the exact same place that I already was walking. I'm not sure. I have not been able to stop thinking about it. I hope that you're doing great. Thanks for the show.
Thank you, Hannah. Now, you know, I'm not sure what to make of this one. Is this one of those cases I teased before sharing Hannah's call? A mysterious stranger that demands a room's attention without even saying a word? Or is this some sort of time slip, a glitch in the matrix sort of thing? Whatever the cause, whoever she is, and whatever she did to mystify everyone there in the room, I'm so glad you decided to share it here with us tonight, Hannah. Now, folks, don't forget that it's the Dogman Days of Summer, which means you get 15% off anything in our merchandise shop. Visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the shop tab. The sale runs to the end of the summer, but no promises on how long everything will be in stock. So, don't wait. Take advantage of our Dogman Days of Summer sale today. Visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click that shop tab. Now, this next call, it's a little bit weird, but that's how we like them. Brian from Florida. Welcome to the show.
My name's Brian. I'm from Florida. I'm originally from New York State. About 20 years ago, 2005, actually about 19 years ago, I had an experience Actually, I had several experiences, and I was thinking that, where do I start? Because I didn't believe in anything until 2004, 2005 about Bigfoot, paranormal activity, ghosts. But I had an incident that happened shortly after. I was a soldier in Afghanistan. I was sent back to the States on a medical program because I was injured, and I was stationed at a friend's trailer that he rented out to me, so I didn't have a home to come back to. And one day I went and sat on my porch, and this is where I'll start because I have so many that are probably actually more astounding than this one. But I sat on my porch one day, and on either side of my porch in Florida, there were bromeliads, which attracted a lot of hummingbirds. So I'm sitting on my porch just trying to chill, trying to like decompress from being back from Afghanistan. And out of the corner of my eye, my left eye, I looked over, and there was a vortex, a little vortex that just opened up like a little whirlpool of digitized pixels. And I looked at it for a second, and it was gone. And I didn't think anything of it. I've only told probably maybe 4, maybe 5 people about this incident. I don't know what it was. Don't know why it was there. But it was there. And make of it what you wish. Thank you for the show. The show is awesome. Bye.
Thank you, Brian. You know, like Joe's mystery white streak earlier in the episode, I also wonder if some natural phenomena is behind the strange vortex that Brian witnessed. A dust devil that picked up some glitter, confetti, or something. But it just doesn't sound like any of that to me. It sounds like something like that should have been easily recognizable. Now, I'm afraid vortexes of any sort are not my forte, but I won't let that squelch my interest, because I enjoyed this call, and frankly, I'm a bit jealous that I didn't get to see what Brian did. But I do thank him for taking the time to call in. Now, real quick, don't forget that you can still catch our film, Shadows in the Desert, High Strangeness in the Borrego Triangle, streaming on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, and a ton of other platforms. Visit borregotriangle.com to learn more. Now, folks, I have just a couple minutes to squeeze in one more call before our next break. So here's an aerial anomaly from Chris over in the state of Maryland.
Hello, Derek. This is Chris from Maryland again. This is my second story. I guess you describe it as some kind of unidentified, aerial phenomenon. But maybe 20 years ago, I was driving with some friends at night. Driving in a car. It was late at night, and I was looking out the window. And I guess, when you're looking up at the stars, like the blackness up there in space, you almost perceive it two-dimensionally. It looks flat. Anyhow, I see this, amongst the stars, basically, this brilliant blue light, like almost like a neon sign. And it was kind of taking the form of almost like an arrow, like a pointing, like, a box with like a, head on top, like an arrow. And it's strange, but it seemed like I could almost perceive it in, 3 dimensions. It started and almost made like a circle, like it was turning, and it started off kind of slow, and then almost like, in the movies when somebody hits like warp speed or something, it kind of like changes. So it's, as it's making like a circle in the sky, it almost like catches, like time slows down or something, and then just takes off, in a flash, and then it's gone. And I can't believe what I've just seen. And, I make a remark, kind of, more or less saying, I can't believe I just said that. And one of the 2 other guys in the car was looking out the window, apparently, and said, oh, you saw that too. And so I asked him, and he saw, the exact same thing as me. And I just couldn't figure out what it could possibly be. I mean, I've seen meteors and things like that before, flying to Earth, and they do present as like, very bright light. Normally it's green when I've seen it almost. But this wasn't that. Like I said, it was seeing it amongst the stars. Anyway, that's my story. I hope you can use it. Bye.
Thank you, Chris. Now, I can't really speak to the arrow that he saw in the sky. If I've ever heard of a similar report, I've blocked it out of my memory. But the other aspect, the craft shooting straight up into the sky at inhuman speeds, that sounds familiar. Now, I might have only shared this on Patreon, but my dad, who still lives back in Ohio, has been seeing strange lights above his property for a number of years now. Orbs of light that he says dances all over the skyline. Too high to be a plane, too low to be some sort of celestial object, and too fast to be anything man-made. And you know, one of the things that he claims that these lights do is shoot straight up into the sky from a dead stop. And it's my understanding that he's witnessed this phenomena a number of times. So I can safely say you're not the only one, Chris. And not only has my father seen the exact same phenomena, but so have countless others that have reported similar experiences over the years. Now, I'm not sure that that's any comfort, but it's all I've got for you for now. But thank you again for calling in.
Angels Radio.
Overrated wrestler in the history of the sport.
Now, this next call is enough to give anyone nightmares, and certainly would have given 12-year-old me a heart attack. Please welcome this anonymous caller from the Sunshine State of Florida.
Hi, Derek. I am from Pensacola, Florida. I'm not going to leave my name, but I just heard, I think it was season 7, episode 4, of this girl who said she had beings come into her room and try to give her a vial of liquid. When I was in my early 20s, I'm so sorry, this is so traumatic, but yet it didn't scare me. I literally woke up on a ship. I had laid down to take an afternoon nap. And I know the difference between a dream and lucid dreaming because I am an avid lucid dreamer, and I could walk around the damn things and tell you when I'm dreaming. I looked over to my right. There were 2 other people about my age. It was a male and a female on 2 other metal tables. Looked over to my left. There was the most beautiful alien I had ever seen in my life. And it kept saying to me, without opening up its mouth, everything's going to be all right. You're fine. The being that was sitting to my left, it was definitely alien by far. And I couldn't make out whether it had skin or scales, but it was some of the most shimmering, brilliant, I guess you would call it opaque, that I had ever seen. And I had absolutely no fear. None whatsoever. As a matter of fact, well, I keep hearing people say that they have all this fear when they have this happen to them. I never have, and I've had quite a few experiences. This one being one of the most stand out of all of them. Next thing I know, I'm hearing what sounds like an airlock door open, and in comes a human being with a duffel bag. Took me into a room across from the table that I was laying on. When I went into the room, he said, "Here, I need you to take this." It was a vial of red powder. He said, "I need you to add this to the water, and I need you to drink it." And before I did, I said, "So what happens if I don't?" He said, "Well, you won't make it. You'll die." I couldn't understand that. What does he mean? So I took it. The next thing I know, I'm waking up on the bottom of my bed, which is not where I laid down, and I'm feeling like this vibratory feeling running throughout my body, and I'm still hearing this creature, this beautiful creature going, "Don't worry, everything is all right." I have never known what to make of it. Throughout the years afterwards, it had to have been a decade at least, I started looking at documentaries, and I was finding more and more people who were saying this has happened to me as well. This is the first time I have heard this on your show. I just recently started listening, and it's touched me, because at least I know I'm not the only one. Thank you. I appreciate your show.
Thank you, caller. Terrifying. Like most of my generation, I'm still scarred by the image of the gray alien that aired on Unsolved Mysteries back in the late 80s. I believe it was the cover to Whitley Strieber's Communion that was shown. But whatever it was, I could see it when I closed my eyes well into my late teens. The thought of something or someone with the ability to take us is absolutely shiver-inducing. And I'm not sure it'll make you feel any better, caller, but there are many more people out there, just like you. Abductees, they call them. And it's reportedly been occurring since the early 1960s. And believe it or not, the details of your harrowing encounter, as terrifying as they were to hear, this isn't the first time that we have. The mention of a more elegant, even beautiful alien creature that communicated telepathically, well, that sounds awfully similar to Calvin Parker's experience during his October 1973 abduction in Pascagoula, Mississippi.
And that's when I noticed some kind of little ruffling noise, and this more feminine-looking creature came out. She looked completely different than the what I call the robot, because he moved like a robot, just mechanical-wise. She looked kind of feminine-looking and had fingers, regular fingers and all, come over and pinched me on the side of the cheek. And then she took her finger and run down my throat and got behind that little thing that hangs down back there and tried to come up in my nasal cavity. And that was when it started hurting and I started choking and I got scared. And she just kind of telepathically told me, you know, don't be afraid, we're not going to hurt you.
And our caller running into another human being on this ship that ordered her to drink a vial of liquid. Well, that's eerily reminiscent of certain details pertaining to Travis Walton's 1975 abduction outside of Snowflake, Arizona.
I heard somebody come in, and I turned around, and it was a man. He wasn't like the other creatures or whatever at all. He looked just like you and I, except he had a helmet on. So I started babbling questions to him, and I ran over there, and he wouldn't answer me. He just took me by the arm and wanted me to go with him. I thought maybe he can't hear me through the helmet. I was led down the hallway and in a room with 3 other people that were like himself. I sat in the chair and I tried to get the people to talk to me that were there, and they didn't have things on their head, and so I thought that maybe they could hear me, but they wouldn't answer either.
And finally, the mysterious pink substance that our caller mentioned. While I don't recall hearing anyone else claim they had to drink this unidentified red dust, that doesn't mean that a strange, red or pink, powdery substance hasn't been involved in these alleged alien abductions. Take the 1961 abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, for example. A pink powder was found in the dress that Betty was wearing that evening.
She folded the dress up when she arrived home and put it in her closet, knowing that she would have to repair it. The next time she took the dress out, it was covered with a pink powdery substance, not the entire dress. Some of it remained blue, but the pink powder discolored the fiber in the dress and degraded the fiber.
Now, of course, we don't know if this is actually connected to our caller's experience in any way. But if you're anything like me, you can't help but clock a bunch of these coincidences. And in some small way, I hope they help our caller out. Because if all these details line up, then that certainly suggests that these folks are telling the truth, and that there are more of them out there, somehow living their lives with this memory bouncing in their minds. Well, I hope this deep dive helped you, caller. I hope that it helps bring some sort of peace. Thank you again for the gut-wrenching entry. Now folks, real fast, if I may. This is a very slow time of year for most creators. We're contending with summer events, warm weather, and longer daylight hours. All factors that put us and every podcast in a little dip each summer. So I thought maybe you could throw us a bone and share us on social media, or mention the show to a weird friend that just might be into this sort of thing. Any kind of word-of-mouth advertising goes a long way to help the program grow and keep it alive, well, into the future. So if you love the show, make an Instagram post or something. Leave a rate or review, or tell your odd Uncle Kevin about it. Now, Sarah, Delaney, and I love producing this show each and every week, and we do so on a shoestring budget and in a near impossible turnaround time. And you know, a little bit of growth would be huge in helping us expand on all of that. All right, that's enough stumping from me, except to mention that Patreon is far and away the most direct way to support the show. Just saying. Now, for tonight's closer. Now, last week I shared a call from Jake in Wisconsin as part of our secret entry. A story about a younger Jake who lived on the res, who found a small door in which he crawled through. There he was introduced to a slew of strange little people. Well, that call seemed to be pretty popular, so I thought maybe I'd chum the waters a bit with another similar entry. This time from the state of Massachusetts. Will, welcome to the program.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Will. I'm from Massachusetts. New to the podcast, but I've been binging this for about a good solid week now. And honestly, I could not help but to tell my story as well. So my story starts off around the year about 1996, I want to say, 1996, 1995, around that era. I was still young, just about 6 years old. And at this time, I'm living in Massachusetts in the Cambridge area. With that being said, it's, not too big of a city, but still quite populated area. So it's not too woodsy or anything, far from woodsy, if you're familiar with the area. So it's a weekday, a school day, and every night around the same time, around 7 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock, my dad will call down to the hallway to let us know when it was bedtime. And at this time, I'm living with, it's me in my own room, and adjacent to my room is my sister's room. And I have 2 sisters, both quite younger than me, one being 4, one being 2. At this time, I said I had my own room to myself, but granted, even though I had the room to myself, I still had a bunk bed in the room. My room is very rectangular when it comes down to the layout, and with my bunk bed being in the room, it was in the back corner of the room. Now, at this time, usually, like I said, around this time, my dad would call us to let us know it's, about time for us to turn our lights off and go to bed. Interestingly enough, I'm already in my bed. I'm pretty used to this routine at this point. So light was off, I'm in my bunk bed, and here my dad called. I was already ready to tell him lights already off, I'm in bed ready to go. As my dad is calling us to let us know this, and as I respond, after I make my statement. Now, mind you, as I'm in my bunk bed, I'm in the top bunk looking at my door, and next to my door is my bedroom light switch. Now, next to my bedroom light switch, off to the right, is a dresser. Just a normal tall dresser. Usually I would have my TV on it. And the thing about this dresser is it's flushed completely to the wall. Completely to the wall. So as I'm responding to my dad, telling him that my light's already off, I notice all of a sudden, out of seemingly nowhere, because he comes from behind my dresser, it's this little, short, small creature. I mean, I couldn't really tell what it was, just due to the fact that it had a brown, tattered kind of cloak on it, like you would see like a monk walking around in, but like with a hood on it, and it was a little tattered at the bottom. And at this point, I'm staring, being 6 or 7. Honestly, I don't know what to say, but I'm just staring at it like, what's going on here? As I'm looking at it and witnessing what this thing is doing, it comes from behind my flushed dresser on the wall, doesn't look anywhere else. It just walks right under my light switch, and then all of a sudden I can see that it's trying to reach up to my light switch to turn the light on. The one truly prominent moment of this memory that I have is the fact that it's on its tippy toes. Like, it could not fully reach my light switch. And I just remember seeing it really struggling trying to get up to that light switch to flip it on. And so as I'm noticing that, after I realize it's on its toes and I see its hands, being me, I sort of yell at it, not loudly, but I, kind of like whispered yell to it to stop. Hey, stop, you're going to get me in trouble. My dad told me to turn off the lights. Stop. As I did that, and again, this thing doesn't turn around, doesn't look at me or anything. It just slowly goes back down, recedes itself, turns around, and just calmly walks back behind my dresser, which is flushed to the wall. And when I realized that at that moment, I just kind of just brushed it off, I guess. I just didn't really say anything about it. I didn't really tell anybody. I didn't tell too many people about this story. As the years go on, as time moves on, I'm 18 at this point. And, that's kind of around the time when YouTube was really getting big and then a lot of videos are being put up, and me being me, I'm very interested into the paranormal and the otherworldly aspects of our planet. And so as I'm looking into some videos, I see that there's these videos of these little people called duendes, or the little brown people or dwarves, which makes me remember this moment I had as a child. So doing so, I look into a little bit of research. Now, mind you, a little backstory about my ancestry. I'm Blackfoot Indian. I'm the last one of my direct family that was born off the reservation. My mother, grandmother, everybody else was born on the reservation. And then when my mother was close at me, she had at that time moved over to the East Coast, where hence I was born. Now, doing so, I looked into my tribe and folklore, just to see if there was any correlation to what I might have seen and if there was maybe anything that would be related and such. And lo and behold, looking into most native tribes, there's actually an entity. Honestly, I can't remember its name in its native tongue, but translated it's little brown people. And they're supposedly little gnomes or dwarves that like to pretty much play around with children. They seemingly will try to get children in trouble, or they play little games on them, or they'll misplace certain items, either important to the child or to the children. But with that being said, I believe that at that time, what I might have witnessed was potentially a little brown person at that time just trying to mess with me, or just getting me a little in trouble. So I never truly felt fear in the moment or anything like that. But after looking it up, I did find it kind of funny that, lo and behold, I was the one who was being pranked. And luckily, it never worked. But that is my story of the little brown person that tried to get me in trouble when I was 6 years old. Thanks again for this podcast. Cannot wait to get this stuff off my chest.
Thank you, Will. Okay, what the hell was that? A tiny little figure in a robe that suddenly appeared out of the side of a wooden dresser. A strange cloaked creature that was adamant about getting that light switch on. Now, I'd like to say I'd never heard of such a thing, but that's simply not true. We've heard countless stories about other strange, small entities that appear in children's bedrooms late at night. We've heard about toadmen, puppets, a dinosaur, and even a chimpanzee in denim overalls, all appearing to children in their rooms late at night. Now, a long time ago, a caller called into the beyond, a psychologist if I remember correctly, suggesting that some of these quote-unquote recollections are actually screened memories, fabricated in the children's mind to help shield them from abuse in the home. Now, while that makes perfect sense, I certainly hope that's not the case for any of these calls. Because I hate to think of these encounters that way. I really like to think of them as true visitors from another place, plane, or time, somehow summoned or even created by these children. Perhaps through an ability we grow out of or a magic that we simply will never understand. But regardless of where these things come from, I love these stories, and judging by the response to last week's installment, so do you, dear listener. So going forward, we'll include this call as our latest data point, in hopes that someday we can get to the bottom of this little mystery. Thank you again, Will, for taking the time to share your tale. And folks, that's going to do it for this episode. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. And this may sound contradictory, but there is more Monsters Among Us coming up, so don't go anywhere just yet. But first, Monsters Among Us is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes and Delaney Bowers. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Please leave us a rate and review wherever that's possible. You have no idea how big of a help that is. Also, follow us on social media. We have accounts at Instagram and Facebook. And of course, give us a like and follow over at YouTube as well. YouTube's algorithm really hates us, so we can use all the help we can get. And if you'd like to catch the show in a more organic setting, you can find it on the UnX Network every Saturday at 11 p.m. Eastern by visiting unxnetwork.com. And lastly, tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Code.ag Music, and Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. And there we go, folks, another one in the bag. Thank you again for tuning in. Thanks to all of tonight's callers, and thank you for the support. I'll catch you all back here next week with a brand new installment. Until then, good night, and keep it spooky.
That was in the mix right now. I figured I could worry about it or do something about it.
Now folks, tonight's secret entry is another installment of the saga of the Little People. I was going back and forth trying to decide if I should play Will's call, which I already did, or Aaron's call, out of the state of Mississippi. Then I remembered that I'm the boss, and I can do whatever I want. So tonight we're playing them both. Please welcome to the secret slot, that second submitter, Aaron, out of the Magnolia State.
Hi Derek, my name is Aaron, coming from South Mississippi. Here locally, it's out in the country, where I grew up, there's a playground that's actually close to a cemetery. So me and my friends, when I was younger, probably around like 11 or 12, would go to this playground and just swing and do things like that. It's close to our house where we live. Well, there was one night that I was going over there by myself, and as I got closer, I was maybe 100 feet from the monkey bars, and there was a figure sitting on the monkey bars. It looked like kind of a human figure, and I didn't really think anything of it. And as I got closer, this figure climbed down, and it looked like it was wearing maybe a robe or something all the way down to the ground. But one thing that stood out to me was this, it was pretty short. I was probably like 12 at the time, and it was about as short as I was. And it had long feet. Like, that was one thing that stood out to me, really long feet. And as I got closer, it took off running in the direction of the cemetery. The cemetery was pretty close to the playground, and it just ran the direction across a parking lot that was there, through the light and into the dark before you get to the cemetery. Thought it was kind of strange at that point. I was young. I really didn't think much of it. It was kind of spooky. And I also know that I'm not the only one to see that. I've heard stories similar to that afterwards. Just thought it was kind of strange. Appreciate the show. I enjoy it. Have a good one.
Thank you, Aaron, for calling in. Now, we attempted to find this playground and cemetery to verify those stories ourselves, but there just wasn't enough information to narrow it down. But how odd. Both Aaron and Will's creatures were described exactly the same. A small, humanoid creature with some sort of cloak or robe covering a majority of its body. Now, folks, we know there are little people legends everywhere, so to sit here and list them all would be silly. But it is worth mentioning that both of these areas that tonight's phone calls originated from, Massachusetts and Mississippi, have their own specific legends about these enigmatic forest folk. In Massachusetts, of course, they call them the Pukwudgie, a race of short, stocky, man-like creatures that terrorize the tribes of the area, primarily the Algonquin. And in Mississippi, they have the Kowi-Anakasha, a legend of the Choctaw Nation, said to be pygmies that were 2 or 3 feet tall and extremely dangerous. You see, the running theme with many of these legends is that they're all small, human-like creatures that love to play tricks and possess a certain type of magic that's said to command respect. And like I said, so many places here in the U.S. have these legends in place, some hundreds, if not thousands, of years old. Is that a coincidence, or is it something more? A big thanks to Aaron for posing that question and for sharing his entry. Well, folks, it's that time of the evening. It's time to go beyond, where you won't find any little people stories tonight, but you will find tales of black masses, haunted barracks, and much more. To join us, just click monstersamonguspodcast.com and push that Patreon tab. Pick that $5 level for all the bonus material, and the $1 level to get all the free stuff ad-free. And trust me, both are incredible deals. And don't forget, you can get a 7-day sneak peek with a free trial. What do you have to lose? Besides hearing amazing tales like Jake's out of Virginia.
Hi, my name is Jake. I'm calling from Virginia. I've only been listening to the show for a few months now. I've been to the first couple of seasons, and then I jumped forward. And I was listening to today's episode. Actually, it released December 8th episode, season 14, episode 12. I'm calling in response to Kim's story because it feels very much like something that I experienced as I was growing up, and I believe she's something called a shadow walker. There are people in this world sometimes can sort of meld into shadows and occasionally move through them, something I would do mostly as a child.